Well, hello and welcome to Hide and Speak. My name is Chris Miller. I'm the CMO of vp.net and Bmail, and I am joined today by my friend Nathan. How you doing, Nathan?
Hello, doing good. Beautiful day out today. Lovely spring summer weather. Having a good time playing with the dogs. So excited for our weekly hide and speak as usual. And obviously, I'm Nathan, a creative media specialist with vp.net, and let's get it going.
Very good, very good. Well, we're glad to have you here. Just a reminder, the opinions expressed by members of our panel are their own personal opinions and do not necessarily reflect the views of Hide and Speak, vp.net, or Bmail. We do want to take a minute to thank vp.net and Bmail, which make Hide and Speak possible. If you would like to support the show, the best way to do that is to sign up for vp.net and Bmail, which also happens to be a great way to protect your privacy online. So we're just going to check out this quick little video, and then we'll be right back. Imagine you want to contact your friend. You got to send them something in the mail, the normal snail mail, if anybody still uses that. So one option, which is like regular email, is just a postcard. So you send that, and anybody who sees this thing along the way, they know who you are. They know who the person who's receiving it is. They know what day and time you sent it, or at least when it was post stamp. They know your address, and they know the content of the message, and they know the person's address. So they got everything. They got all the information they could possibly want. So the next option would be like some of these other encrypted email providers that don't encrypt the metadata, like Proton, for example. That's sort of like having a postcard where the message is invisible. Maybe that's in a secret code, so nobody along the way can see the message, but they can still see the sender, they still see the receiver, they see which city it was sent from, they see your address, they see the receiver's address. More than enough information in a lot of cases to figure out what's going on right there. And again, like the subject line, that's like on the, the front of it says like, greetings from Hawaii. It's like, okay, well, now this person's in Hawaii now. And that's kind of like having the subject line visible. So then Bmail is like, you take a letter and you put it inside a safe and you seal that safe with a digital code and you ship the safe to the person. And he is the only other person in the entire world that knows what that code is. That's how Bmail is. So anybody along the way, good luck. Like, you're not getting inside. This is a safe. That's kind of how Bmail works. It's basically a vault, and the only people who have the code are you and the person that you're sending it to. Yep, that's what it is. Bmail, it's the way to go. So, as you probably have seen, we were planning to do an episode today about Utah and about specifically the surveillance things that are popping up there, because Utah is sort of being used as a test bed for the nation and sort of trying out surveillance things there, including a bunch of crazy stuff. They got the obvious. What?
Yeah, it's scary out there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, they got the usual stuff, the flock, but to a much higher degree than a lot of other areas. But they're even pushing things like smart roads that will talk to your car and like know where you're driving at all times and link that all into the same databases, and smart cities. And their governor even said that he's going to be spending more time in Silicon Valley than the governor of California. So like, to give you an idea of what the plans are there. And they willingly volunteered actually a few years ago, saying we want to be the first smart cities. Like, let's try this here first. Which is kind of strange because their whole vibe there is sort of small government and stuff. So it's strange that their government is going the complete opposite direction. And to power all of this, they actually have Kevin O'Leary, the guy from Shark Tank, is building a data center there that is roughly the size of Washington, D.C. And all of Utah uses like less than 4 gigawatts of energy. And when it's completed, this data center is planned to use over 9 gigawatts of electricity, to give you, more than double the power of the entire state combined. So pretty insane stuff going on there. To need that sort of processing power, they obviously have some pretty insane plans there. Now, the unfortunate thing is we had a plan for our guest to come on today from Utah Freedom Coalition, and we have not seen them yet. Haven't heard from them. I'm not sure if they're having some technical issues or what the deal is there. But honestly, like, it would do a major disservice to the audience for us to attempt this conversation without them, because they have personally acquired and viewed all of the government procurement documents for all of this stuff. So they, what they're saying is not just conjecture. They actually know. They've seen the government documents of specifically what they're buying and what they're implementing. So we're hoping that maybe they'll pop in soon. Otherwise, I guess we'll have to reschedule with them. So in the meantime, we're going to have to talk about something else. So how about the World Cup? No, I'm just kidding. I really don't care.
Hey, USA.
Sure. So I think we're going to start talking about biometrics, because it's just something that's, literally everywhere you look nowadays. And it's very important topic, and it's sort of taken over. So just to get the definition straight to start, because the word gets used very loosely. People use the term biometric for all kinds of things, but what it truly is a physical or behavioral trait that can be measured and used to identify you. So there's the obvious one. You have like fingerprints, and then like geometry of your face to do facial recognition, the pattern of your iris, the shape of your ear, even DNA technically counts as a biometric. But then there's other ones that people are maybe less aware of, things like the rhythm of how you type on a keyboard, the way that you hold and swipe things on your phone, your gait, which is like the way that you walk, the way you sign your name, your voice. All of these different things are different like footprints to you specifically in ways that you can be identified. They can see a video of you walking down the street and recognize the pattern of your steps and the way that you're walking and use that to identify you, even if they can't see your face or see anything identifiable about you. The typing one is wild too. Like literally just it's potentially possible just to hear how somebody is typing and use that rhythm to potentially identify them, which is an insane thing. But here's the thing that matters. Like when a system scans your face, it's not just saving a photo and comparing it to photos. It's measuring like hundreds of points all over your face, the distance between different features, the contours, ratios, and it turns all of that into a string of numbers, which is like a template. And the template is the thing that gets stored and compared. So when we say your biometrics are in a database, it usually means a mathematical fingerprint of your body is sitting in a database. So that distinction is going to matter a lot later, because people assume that if no photo was stored, that nothing personal was stored. But that's not how this works. It's actually much worse. The templates are sticky. So a good face template made today will likely still match your face perfectly in 20 years, allowing for aging models that are getting better at bridging the gap. So a password from 20 years ago is long dead. So if somebody stole your password 20 years ago, it's not causing you any more harm today. But if somebody stole a picture of your face, a full, complete template of your face, that's going to be a problem for the rest of your life unless you drastically change your face, which is a lot harder than resetting your password. So Nathan, when did you first use like a biometric to unlock something? And what did you think about it at the time?
So, yeah, I guess for a total, I mean, like we have listed here like a work badge or something like that. And, I've definitely had, cards for work that you had to use to sign in to get into a certain room or whatever with that. But I think the first time I actually used a biometric would probably be on my phone for the fingerprint when they started coming out with that. You felt like, oh, this will be an easy, quick way to unlock my phone, right? So, and it turned out that was wrong, because obviously then now it was like, I want to say 2 or 3 months later after I'd signed up for it, I use an Android phone, and it stopped recognizing my fingerprint. So I couldn't even get into my own phone, which is a totally different topic than what we're talking about. All of this stuff doesn't even function very well. But then I basically realized that, like, oh, these people just have my fingerprints, and they could then use my fingerprints for whatever. And they could send or share my fingerprints to let somebody else, or somebody hack into the system and get my fingerprints and use it for all types of different things. And that's just fingerprints. Now we're on to the topic of they measure the width of your eyes, how wide you are, like your nose, and like you said, typing on the keyboard, or how you talk, the cadence of your speak. How much do you go whatever when you're talking, or things like that, and just like the rate that you speak at. They can measure all of these things. And once you combine just one or two of these things, it's very hard to get around.
Oh, for sure. And like, especially, it's scary because there's different things happening at the same time. So on one hand, they're now getting really good at identifying somebody by voice. And on the other hand, they're getting really good at cloning your voice and being able to use that without you. So it's like, they're creating what they claim are like much more secure methods of identifying somebody, but at the same time, in parallel, they're already building the things that will defeat them. So it's
that's what I was kind of alluding to with the fingerprint thing. It's like, okay, so now you have my fingerprint, so you can put my fingerprint on whatever you want, and you can pretend to be me now. So this isn't any more secure or safe for people than just like a password. It's, if anything, it's more dangerous and more incriminating.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like you said, you can just go reset your password. Like you can't reset you can reset your fingerprints, but it's pretty painful from what I understand.
And this might be a bit of a tangent here, but it's like, I think it was like the 1960s or 70s when they started really coming out with a forensic database of fingerprints and DNA. And especially when they added DNA, like the homicide clearance rate, which is like how many homicides get solved every year, it went from like 93% down to in the 50%. So now almost half of homicides aren't even solved today in this country. So it's like a really weird thing where it's like we think we have more accurate data, but what that leads to is more inaccuracies, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Veronica, so glad you could join us. Can you hear us?
Hello. Oh, yeah. She probably has to figure it out.
No, no worries.
Oh, are you there?
Hey, there we go.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I am not hearing you. I can see you. I just can't hear you.
You know, that happened to Frank last week, too. Let me try removing her and come putting it back on. Hi, can you hear us now? Are you able to hear us?
Oh, I can hear you now.
You can?
I can. I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Sorry for the issues. Welcome to Hide and
that's
Speak.
okay.
Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. I've been waiting. I thought I was waiting in the back room, but apparently I was not, and I was getting a little nervous.
Yeah, no, you know, it gave somebody some trouble last week too, so we're gonna have to complain about that, and hopefully that'll do something. But but anyway, we're glad that you're here. Veronica is with the Utah Freedom Coalition. Can you just tell everybody a little bit about what you guys do?
Well, we're an organization of collaborators. We do a lot of research. We write articles about issues and concerns that are going on with the state of Utah, and we bring those issues to the light. We do a lot of blog posting and articles. And if you're interested, you can go to utahfreedomcoalition.org and you can look at, we have a number of articles on there that you can read through.
Very good. Yeah, I was actually reading a bunch on there. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. Especially you wrote a whole thing on the on government that was a whole series that was actually really good. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Shadow government series. That's what it was.
Yeah.
So let's get into the heart of the topic here. We got Utah. You know, we explained a little bit about this before when you were trapped somewhere in the nebulous, but so basically, Veronica, Utah's brand is small government and personal freedom. So how did this state of all states end up being the national testbed for connected vehicle surveillance?
Well, traditionally, you know, Utah's been viewed as a relatively small state, very conservative, you know, just a hardcore red state, kind of weird because of the religion, and nothing to see here kind of state, if you know what I mean. But quietly behind the scenes, you know, they were at the forefront of digital everything, including all the way back to ARPANET in the 60s. Utah was actually the fourth node on the creation of the internet with the DoD. And that started this whole process. Then in the 90s, Mike Levitt had all these great tech ideas and then the creation of Silicon Slopes. But what I think got lost here was that people forgot to include the privacy issues and concerns. Now, Utah at the time had a really high trust culture, and they didn't really question anything. In fact, you know, the people didn't even really have any idea about what was happening behind the scenes. And this essentially opened the door for surveillance technology to enter.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if people are really trusting of their government, then they're not really paying a lot of attention. A lot of other states, like, they're used to this kind of stuff, so they're constantly watching. You know.
Yeah.
Well,
and you know, they're a very independent state as well. Independent people within the state just put their head down, go to work. Hardworking individuals, you know.
Well, that's kind of the story of Utah, right? Like, that's all the people that traveled out west. And pretty far west.
Yeah, you know, I spent a little bit of time there. I spent like a week camping there and spent a lot of time just traveling around the state and exploring, and met a lot of different people. And like, I was, from what my experience there and the people I met and the conversations I had, I was really surprised to see all this stuff happening in Utah. I was like, really? There? It just didn't seem like the place. In fairness, I didn't go into the big cities and stuff, but you know, like the general people that I met in Utah, like it didn't seem like the kind of place you'd see this popping up. So it just shows it can happen anywhere. Well, what was
Anyone?
the first thing that you found in Utah's own records that you couldn't unsee?
Oh, well, for me, as I started to research things, I began to realize that Mike Levitt was leading in a lot of this stuff. And Utah seemed to be a pilot state for things. So, for
Mhm.
example, in 1988, the Coalition for Utah's Future filed for an EIN number for Envision Utah. And then in 1995, the coalition began Envision Utah. And the thing people need to realize with this is that Envision Utah is a non governmental organization and a public private partnership.
Hmm.
And this framework has actually been adopted by dozens of regions across the state. He also created Smart Utah, and he
Mhm.
got all 50 governors to sign off on it. From there, it became Smart States in 2015. So this quiet, conservative, independent, religious state became very influential in leading out with this stuff. And this, this isn't to say that we don't like technology. It can be a very positive thing. But even if you like technology, the surveillance side of it has gone way too far. Initial questions regarding privacy weren't addressed. And when you look at it now, the problem now is that all the infrastructure is already in place. And the only way of dismantling that is to dismantle the law. And that's going to be very difficult because that's going to have to include lawsuits. And we know lawsuits can take years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this kind of goes on what you said, that like Levitt famously vowed to spend more time in Silicon Valley than California's own governor did. So how much of what Utah is today traces back to that one ambition?
Oh, well, we've seen that shift to digital everything.
Mhm.
Digital driver's licenses, digital ID, electronic voting. A door has been opened that's going to be very difficult to shut if it's even possible to do so. I
Mhm.
mean, Utahns, as well as people nationwide, they really need to realize that we're at a precipice right now. We need to start demanding answers to our questions. And we have to ask ourselves, are we going to choose freedom or are we going to choose convenience? Because it seems as if we've chosen convenience over our constitutional rights. And when you look at the big picture, we keep losing more and more of our freedoms. Everything is becoming centralized and promoted as convenience. And when that happens, control systems are put into place, and those become very difficult to remove. And digital also means that they can revoke your access at the flip of a switch. You can be locked out of your bank account or your car. I mean, a couple of quick examples: China and the Netherlands. We saw people locked out of their bank accounts because they donated to the farmers' cause. And then in China, when citizens protested, people couldn't access mass transit and they were just stranded. They couldn't go anywhere
That's crazy.
because everything was through their whole life is a digital ID. They're tracked and traced everywhere. And do you really want to live in a society like that?
Yeah, I mean, even just in Canada, not too long
was just
ago, the trucker
Canada.
protest, and they revoked act, started seizing people's bank accounts because they were protesting against the government.
Yeah, very, very true.
And it's wild. And now when they have a way to see everything you say or do, whether it's in public or private, then like everybody knows, like, you better keep your mouth shut or else you're going to be in trouble. And like that's not freedom.
And once there's this kind of money behind it too, that changes everything, especially with all of this infrastructure that they're building. They're going to say, oh, well, we have these giant buildings that we have to pay for, and we have our 200 employees. You wouldn't want to fire our employees, right?
Yeah, they always want to play on the
Yep.
emotional side instead of looking
Exactly.
at things logically.
Yep. That's how, right now, a lot of people are upset about all the data centers being built everywhere. And that's always the argument, like, well, it's going to create a bunch of jobs. And I'm like, well, the reality is they create a bunch of jobs in the construction and then most of those jobs disappear. Like, it doesn't actually take a lot of people to run a data center. So like the
Right. It's
jobs,
temporary.
it's a temporary thing, and that the drain on the economy and the water and the power of the state is forever. So let's
Yeah,
see. It's
very true.
some of the USDO or the UDOT pages that you cite have vanished. A few scrubbed even from the Wayback Machine. Tell me about chasing documents that somebody wants gone.
Well, I think by even asking that question, that tells you that whoever's removing the documents, it's because they don't want regular people like you and me diving into this sort of thing. And honestly, I think it's a great compliment to those who are out there on the front lines, pushing back, investigating, exposing the corruption. I mean, because it really is a collective effort. I personally have received so much help from others, and I trade that help right back to them. You know, there's this network of people who research and share their information with others so that it can be spread everywhere. Like this podcast, for example, you know, this is going to reach your listeners. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think it needs to continue. We have to continue to keep pushing back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we're here. Absolutely.
Well, you get enough raindrops, you get an ocean, right? So it's important for small individuals to do their part.
And you know, another thing about Utah, people need to realize Utah was working with the federal government on this issue in terms of the U.S. Department of Transportation. So on their website, which has actually been scrubbed, it was the U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Highway Administration website. And in that very first paragraph, it states that the Utah Department of Transportation, and this is straight from the document, with its foundational statewide network of fiber and legacy advanced transportation infrastructure and urban connected vehicle deployment currently in final testing, and robust set of traveler information systems and services, proposes to expand the principles of smart city deployment to become the first true smart city in the country. And that was a grant that they filed called Utah Connected. And it just builds upon that established technical, institutional, and private sector strategic relationships that are established across the state and throughout the region, you know, and they're supposed to address traffic congestion and mobility and public safety concerns. But it really does explain, when, as you read through the document, you'll see that there are phases, and it tells you how they're going to roll it out. There's another section called the deployment plan, and this explains how it's going to be deployed. It gives you specifics on the deliverables and their dates. I mean, it's a crazy document, and I just don't think that people know, because most of this stuff isn't really announced. They just do it behind the scenes, and the only way you know is you have to be paying attention to bills or the state taking that grant money. You know, if you're not looking for those kind of things, you don't know. And it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. I mean, I just recently found out about this, and I live here, and I had no idea.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Like kind of the theme, right? They don't want you to know.
They don't want you to know. And I think this is why this is really important, to have a group or a coalition of people, because no single person can find it all. I mean, we really want to try and help you, so you know and understand it can, and so that you can see it in your own states.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, you know, we're talking specifically about Utah, but we're actually talking about everywhere, because almost every state is talking about all of these technologies. This is on the board for everyone. It's just Utah happens to be further ahead. They're like the test bed right now. So everybody's watching them to see how this works, how the rollout goes, you know, how effective it is, all that stuff. So what we're looking at is Utah, but what we're really looking at is our future, for everybody's future. This is what's happening for everybody in America at some point in time, if we don't stop it before it gets there. So like Utah, it may not be your state, but it's the first battleground. Even if you don't personally have any skin in the game in Utah, if it succeeds there, it's coming to your state too. So it's really important for everybody in America to kind of be paying attention to what's happening in each of these jurisdictions, because that's how it works. They get it to work somewhere, and they use that as their proof of concept to just roll it out everywhere without asking any questions. So
that's very true.
This is important to us all.
Yeah, and if you want to see how this has been rolled out, with Envision Utah, I would ask your listeners to just type in Envision in whatever their state is. Envision Ohio, whatever their state is.
Mhm.
It's being rolled out. It's already there.
Absolutely. Well, let's see what we got next here. Utah just passed SB 275 unanimously, and the ACLU called it the strongest digital ID privacy framework in the country. You've been warning about digital ID for years. What do you see in the bill that they don't?
Well, the biggest thing we see missing is a constitutional amendment.
Mm.
We needed that to precede the passing of the bill, and that didn't happen. But we need to ensure that people have access to a physical ID and real interactions with real human beings forever. It can't be an option, because options can always be taken away from you. It should be a guarantee through a constitutional amendment. The ability to transact physically and not just in a digital format should never be taken away from us. And without an amendment, SETI can, which is the state endorsed digital ID, it can and will be overridden. And all the hard work that everybody put into that, it'll be lost.
Makes sense. Well, the state's entire pitch on the digital ID is the word voluntary, but walk me through how something that starts as voluntary ends up becoming mandatory in practice.
Well, there's quite a few examples of that. But things that start out voluntary can become mandatory through legislation, regulation, court decisions, funding. A couple examples would be seatbelts. I mean, at one point, and I may be dating myself, but at one point, seatbelts were voluntary, and they were even considered optional equipment in most vehicles. And now you can get pulled over and given a ticket for not wearing one. So that's happened over the course of time, but it's happened. There's other examples such as motorcycle helmets or social security numbers. I mean, your social security numbers were created for retirement benefits, but over time it became required to show for employment, banking, credit reporting, government benefits, and even vaccination requirements. In fact, some vaccinations became prerequisites for participation in school attendance. Now, this isn't to say that these are all bad things, but anytime they start off voluntary,
Right.
they usually end up being mandatory.
Yeah, that is generally how it goes.
Seems like a cycle where they apply the public pressure too, like, oh, we better do what everybody else is doing, and the peer pressure angle that is pretty much
well,
always
that emotional. It's always through the emotional lens.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to make you feel like you're endangering others if you don't comply, essentially.
Oh, we saw that just a few years ago.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that a few years ago. One thing I hear a lot of people say, like the pushback on digital ID or for digital driver's license is, who cares? The DMV already has all the information about you. But having it in their computer versus having it on your phone is two different things. So like what is the main difference between having just an ID in your pocket and having all of that on your phone?
Well, think about that. That's always the excuse. Well, they already have everything, so you might as well just do it. That's always the lead out excuse. But the real issue is putting everything in a centralized location. So for example, just because we've been tracked, traced, and surveilled without our consent, now that we know that it's actually happening, we shouldn't allow it to continue. I mean, we absolutely have a duty to push back against the tyranny. And you have to say no more. When do you say no more? And you have to look at the number of entities that are actually going to have your data. The DMV, for Utah, it's going to be the Utah Department of Transportation and third-party vendors. And where does that information go in relation to the third-party vendors? Where are they outsourcing that information to collect the data? I mean, everything is being sold as convenience, and convenience over freedom is really that's a bad thing.
It's a bad
Because
trade.
yeah, it's a bad trade because our freedom and our constitutional rights are worth putting time and effort into to preserve our way of life.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and then how many people work for those government agencies and those third-party
Mhm.
sources, right? So you're just giving your data access to more and more and more people. Like,
Mhm.
so now I have to trust 250,000 different employees with my personal data. Like
Mhm.
it's just crazy.
I mean, like the government, their agencies get breached all the time. They leak data all the time. So it's not like they're, impenetrable. So the more data they have, the more they're going to leak. That's just math. That's how math works,
Yeah. I mean, how many times have you received a letter in the mail that says, oopsie, there's
Oh,
been
yeah.
a data breach and your social security, your name, your address have all been leaked?
Yep.
But here's what you can do. You can pay to have your credit monitored, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. So listen, the new law spells out where digital ID will be used, like bars, schools, banks, even police stops. Which one of those keeps you up at night?
All of them. I
Yeah.
mean, think about it. In today's society, we're lost without our phones. They essentially have become our lives, right? But the problem I see is that you may inadvertently hand over your phone to the wrong person.
Mhm.
In the case of getting pulled over by the police, okay, a lot of people don't know if they have their ID on their phone, they don't realize that they have the option to opt out. Just like, look at my ID, right? But when asking for your driver's license, you unlock your phone and you hand it to the police officer. And what you've done is allowed
No
that
thanks.
officer, yeah, you've allowed that officer to access your entire life. And there's nothing to prevent that officer from looking through your phone to try and find something else they can
Mhm.
ticket you for. And I'm not saying that all officers do that, but what I am saying is that scenario isn't unrealistic. But
Yeah, no,
what it, yeah, but what it does is it puts everyone in a bad position. It allows, again, that door to be opened to take advantage of or do things that aren't right.
yeah, that makes sense. The bill sponsor says digital ID is coming no matter what, so Utah should shape it. What's your answer to the inevitability argument?
Ah, again, that's another excuse that's always put out there.
Mhm.
Just because it's coming doesn't mean we should allow it. And just because it's coming doesn't mean that we shouldn't put guardrails into place,
Mhm.
right? And to be totally frank, I don't see digital ID as salvageable. We have it, here in Utah, but I think I can speak. I think I can speak for the rest of the country in those terms, where we have no constitutional protections in place,
Mhm.
right? Prior to the passage of this bill here in Utah. And our legislators here at the state level, they're not necessarily adhering to the Constitution.
Mhm.
They implement the law and then they wait for somebody to challenge it, you know? And the other thing people should look at is
That's a
that,
great point. Yeah.
yeah, we should never allow this to be centralized. Now, the argument to that is that they tell you, oh, well, it's going to be decentralized for you, for us, but not for the creators, because
Mhm.
whoever creates the program will always have a backdoor into the system. And there's absolutely no guarantee that the system can't be hacked. There's just not.
Yeah, for sure. Any system potentially could be. Like Discord, they put out age verification for the first time, and they had 60,000 people's IDs leaked in a couple weeks. And we see it over and over again. There was that other one that leaked ID merit was what 1 billion different people they leaked their information. It happens over and over again, and it's going to happen more because these databases are becoming infinitely more valuable. The more information they have about somebody, the more of a
Right.
complete picture they can paint, then the more valuable that is to hackers and criminals and ID thieves. So it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Now we're building these perfect targets for them essentially.
And we just
Right.
we keep feeding them more and more of our data, like we were just talking about with the biometrics. It's like you're just giving them everything.
Everything.
The shape of your face, your nose, your eyes, your fingerprints.
Everything. So you guys remember George Orwell in 1984, right?
Oh yeah.
So before his death, somebody was asking him about his book, 1984. And this is what he said. He said something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time. In our world, there will be no emotions except for fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. The sex instinct will be eradicated. We shall abolish the orgasm. There will be no loyalty except to the party. But always there will be the intoxication of power. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy that's helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
Well,
I
and
think that's pretty telling.
Yeah.
right. And when was the last time that the government took such type of a power and then gave it back?
Government never gives back their
Patriot
power.
Act or right. As soon as they gain that power, it's never given back in any society or country throughout history. So
Right. And the
dangerous
people have
world we live in.
forgotten. Yeah, the people have forgotten that they
Right.
actually have the power.
Absolutely. Let's see what we got next. This is weird. This is some wild stuff. Utah's roads are becoming wired to talk to your car. For someone who's never heard the term V2X, what exactly is the state building right now?
Well, I had actually never heard of V2X until I started preparing for this podcast, actually. So V2X is vehicle to everything. The V2X communications and its solutions enable the exchange of information between vehicles and between a vehicle network infrastructure. And according to, I had to look this up, according to the 5G America's V2X Cellular Solutions Executive Summary, these communications consist of 4 types. You have vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to network, and vehicle to pedestrian. And Utah's actually working to be the epicenter of electrified transportation. Up at Utah State University, they're actively working to advance research of sustainable electrified roads. And the technology and the roads, the technologies being implemented as a way to improve, you guessed it, safety, road safety. It lets cars and trucks talk to each other to warn of a possible collision. Now, this technology isn't new, but the questions arise as to where it belongs, in the vehicles or on the roads. However, according to the Department of Transportation, they are estimating that V2X technology would be installed along 50% of the national highway system and about 40% of the country's intersections by 2031.
Holy smokes.
And they're also, they estimate it being in passenger vehicles by the 2028 model year. And again, the concern, what is the concern? Our data is being collected. It's going to collect our movements, our behaviors as we move through our everyday lives. And once again, there's that potential for hacking. And once your data is out there, it's out there. And there's no way to effectively retrieve it.
Well, and Utah is huge, like size-wise as a state. So you're talking about hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of miles of road. And
Who's going to pay for that?
Right. Well, and I've only been to Utah once when I was a small child, but I know the state that I live in, the roads aren't very great. They can't even fix the potholes. So what's going to happen when these things are electrified and recording us? You're telling me there's not going to be any issues that arise with any of that or problems?
Yeah. And what does that say about gas-powered vehicles? You might want to think about that. Because if everything is electrified, what is that going to do? Are you going to be allowed to drive on those electrified roads if you have a gas vehicle?
Right. Time for a big gas off-road truck. Plenty of places to go off-roading in Utah. I speak from experience. You've shown tens of millions in federal grants flowing into Utah's smart roads. How does that money decide what gets built before voters ever weigh in?
Well, never usually gets to the voters. It's like, and I'm going to talk about this a little later, but it's like the data center in MITA. Mm-hmm. People didn't even know what was happening until all of a sudden, wow, it's here. And they were left wondering, wait a minute, what happened? But the voters never actually get to weigh in. To be fair, though, they might have some meetings where the public could come and make comment. But as we've seen, and I'm sure you guys have all seen these different videos with the Box Elder situation, the people weren't even allowed to give public comment. I mean, the county commissioners eventually, they voted to finish the meeting virtually, and then they approved to move the project forward against the outcry of all the people.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Like, the whole thing about representative government is that they're supposed to represent what the people want, but that seems to be the major disconnect we have. And that's not just Utah, that's everywhere.
That's everywhere.
Vision Zero promises 0 traffic deaths. When you follow that promise all the way to its logical end, what does the road system have to look like?
Okay, well, let's think about this. The logical conclusion is 0 cars on the road. I mean, it means nobody drives, well, except for those who are in charge of the roads or those, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're either going to walk, you're going to ride your bike, or you're going to take mass transit. They may include some autonomous vehicles, but that kind of scares me. I don't like that. But in order to have 0 traffic deaths, you have to remove people and their vehicles from the road. You must remove their ability to travel freely.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to get people to stop crashing. Like, all you have to do is go look at how people drive. That part's not going to work. So
yeah, and again, it's always this. It's either convenience or for your safety. For your safety, we have to take your right to travel away from you.
I'm good. Yeah. I don't need to be safe. You called the 2034 Olympics an accelerant. What surveillance infrastructure gets built for the games that never gets taken down after?
Oh, well, as we've seen with the 2002 Olympics, it's the surveillance system itself, really, when you think about that. In terms of what's left behind, again, surveillance. But in addition to that, we have the Utah Olympic Legacy Foundation, and it's a nonprofit organization who oversees the 3 designated training sites. There's the Utah Olympic Oval, the Olympic Park, and Soldier Hollow Nordic Center. But, Utah also got the World Trade Center, Utah. Camp Williams got the NSA Data Center. So when you look at that stuff, it's really concerning. And I do suspect that we're going to see a whole bunch of money coming into Utah's infrastructure bank, the Public Infrastructure Bank of UDOT. And I would venture to guess that money is going to flow to Utah for transportation-related items, just like it did in 2002. Millions of dollars.
There it is. There's my muted mic. It's a pretty regular thing we do here.
Hello.
Yeah, that's a regular thing we do. That's how people know we're not AI. We screw up all the time. But yeah, like you saw the World Cup, like there's, the amount of additional cameras added all around the entire area, the amount of infrastructure added to support all that, that it's not going to disappear afterwards. It never does, And a lot of times you see these events and you wonder, like, when you see how much of it gets invested into an infrastructure that sticks around forever and has, ulterior motives, you have to wonder, like, is that really like a big part of the reason why this event happened here? Is, was it because of the event, or is it because of an excuse to add a bunch of stuff that we wouldn't agree to otherwise? Because that's the thing, when people, the general public, when you say, well, we got to add all these extra cameras because the World Cup, it might be a terrorist attack. Everybody's like, oh, that's a good point. Yeah, sure. Add the cameras, and then when it ends, they're already used to them and they just forget about it and life goes on. So it's like this easy way to get people comfortable with the idea of more surveillance, but yeah, I mean, I think the Olympics is about as a big of an excuse for that as you can possibly get. So,
Well, the Olympics have essentially become a politicized organization.
yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So let's see where we at in time. Okay, we can go on. Flock cameras, everybody's favorite surveillance tool. Flock cameras are now in Provo, Ogden, and Cedar City, and Boulder is rebidding its whole contract over Flock's data sharing. What do you know about Flock's network that the average city council member voting on it doesn't?
Well, as I stated before, surveillance is what's left behind. We saw that with the 2002 Olympics, and surveillance continues to be a driving force in our society. And the way that gets built is by building the framework. So when you think about transportation, what has to happen before you can even have a road? You have to build the infrastructure. You have to put that infrastructure in place before you start building. And that's exactly what they're doing. With surveillance, they're putting all these measures in place that we don't even think about. And it's disguised as convenience or for your safety. I mean, you think about how cool is it? You have drones dropping off your Amazon order, your medication, etc. But how did they get to that point? Well, they got to that point because they built the infrastructure through legislation. For example, air mobility statutes. So again, surveillance is not coming down. And proof of that is all the cameras on our roads and highways. And I know in the area that I live, I had actually identified, I went through and I identified there was like 36 cameras in my area. And I was talking to somebody about it. And when I went back to look at, it was like a week later, when I went back to look, the cameras were gone. They had been moved.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah, I thought it was really weird. Had the conversation with that same person, and they said, "Oh yeah, they move them all the time."
It's probably because, deflock. Now people are getting used to where they are. They put them up on deflock, so they probably keep switching them around to catch people again.
Yeah.
Tricky. Police say a flock camera just photographs plates on a public road, same as anyone standing on a corner could. Where does that argument break down?
Well, I think it breaks down in their own documents because they actually claim to be able to identify the make, the model, and color of the vehicles. They can identify other characteristics such as maybe bike racks or trailers. If you have toolboxes, what those toolboxes look like. And, they say they don't use facial recognition, but when you go and you stop at a stoplight, you see the cameras. So are they taking a picture of the whole vehicle? And if you're in that vehicle, is it gonna grab your face? But even if they say they don't use facial recognition, you still have to ask if that capability exists within the system.
Well, so
And-
the thing about Flock is like the ALPR is their red herring. Anytime somebody talks to them about surveillance, whatever, they always go to the lowest common denominator, which is the license plate cameras. And like, oh no, it's just taking these low quality photographs of the back of a car. It's not a whole lot, which completely ignores the fact that they also offer AI facial recognition cameras and drones with AI built into them. And, they offer all of those other products, but anytime somebody brings up surveillance, they always steer the conversation to the ALPR, which is like the weakest as far as like what it's capturing. It is the weakest offering that they have. So that's why they always want to talk about that instead of the other ones. But the fact of the matter is, they definitely do. They have an advanced search capability where they can literally type in, show me everybody with a green flannel shirt on, and it will show them pull all the video automatically from any location in the search area for anyone wearing a green flannel shirt. You know what I mean?
And
so
now they've added
crazy.
microphones too. Like, what does a microphone serve to view a license plate? And how do you know it's a plate?
Well, originally it was a gunshot detector. Remember, that was the original sales pitch, was a gunshot detector. And then, after they were starting to be installed, they're like, oh, by the way, we can also detect, other things such as aggressive speech. Like, whoa, hold on. Aggressive speed, like a gunshot. Okay, I can believe that a gunshot you can detect without like recording audio. You know what I mean? Because a gunshot is a very specific sudden burst of energy, whatever. But aggressive speech, now I know that you're just listening and listening with AI. You know, I mean, there's no other way you could possibly determine if somebody's using aggressive speech in the area. So, you know, and that's how it is. They promise one small thing that is sort of acceptable, and then later on you realize it is expanded to much, much worse, but it's already too late because it's already there.
Yeah, because they're lulling you into this feeling of complacency. They're showing you the trinket on one hand. Oh, here's the license plate readers, and this is what they do.
No.
Well, with the right hand is going behind, you know, your back with all of these other technologies. And that's a huge breakdown, because nobody agreed to have all of their Fourth Amendment rights thrown out the window. You know, they didn't agree to that.
No, absolutely not. So then the other side of it is they'll stick to individual emotional cases that make people join their side. Like, you know, there's a flock camera helped Provo police solve a hit and run in just 20 minutes. So, you know, that sounds great to people. So what do you say to people that point at stuff like that?
I say that's great. However, the problem I see with this is that the system that's initially built to do good eventually expands beyond the intended purpose and scope. There's so many concerns regarding security, privacy, you know, and just this ever-present dread of being surveilled constantly. That, like, it flings the door open for abuse, you know. And there are examples. Great, we solved the hit and run in 20 minutes. That's great, right? But there's also cases, like I think there's 18 cases nationwide of officers allegedly abusing this license plate reader data. You know, where they're stalking their partners, they're tracking their romantic interests, you know, either their current partner, their ex-partner, their ex-partner's boyfriend or girlfriend. You know, I mean, that's crazy. And people might say, oh, that's not a lot. But if you were the one being stalked or tracked via this method, I mean, you might feel very differently. And I think everyone should feel very differently, because we are being tracked. We are being traced. And these cameras, they're being turned against us.
Yeah.
They really are. They're collecting all of this data, like you said. Who's wearing a green shirt today because we don't like green? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, really, when you think about it, you know what a panoptic prison is, right? That's what we're turning into. We're just
absolutely,
these cameras are turning our society into a panoptic surveillance infrastructure.
Yep. And for the audience, if I know you've probably all heard the term panopticon before, you know, big surveillance thing. If you haven't seen it before, look up what that actually means. Panopticon prison. It'll blow your mind. It'll make a lot more sense, but it's a very interesting thing to take a look at some of the pictures. It'll kind of really creep you out. But the concept was a prison where one central guard tower can see everything at all times. So it's like the all-seeing guard, basically.
The all-seeing eye.
So the panopticon, that's what it is. It's, you know, they see all of us and everything we're doing at all times. That's the concept. But the flock situations, it's just wild to me. Let's see. The average new car now has cameras inside and out and its own modem. Whose hands is that data in right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because we certainly know it's not in our hands. You know, all of this data has to go somewhere. Does it go back to the manufacturer? And if so, what do they use it for? Do they sell it to insurance companies or marketing companies? I mean, how do we actually know what they do with that data? We don't. Why? Because we have no access to it. And when you think about vehicles like Teslas, everybody knows Tesla, you know, they have cameras on the outside that surveil constantly. So if you're near a Tesla, you're being recorded. And even if you've purposely chosen not to own a Tesla because you don't want to be surveilled, if you're in the vicinity of one, you're being recorded. And I just, for me, I think to myself, how is this not an invasion of our privacy? We should be having that conversation and asking ourselves, how far is too far?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you're supposed to have control of your own privacy, but like we live in a world where your neighbor can choose to take away all of your privacy. They can choose to put a Ring doorbell on that's facing your house, and they can choose to have a Tesla sitting there that's, constant recording. Your neighbor can make decisions that violate the privacy of your whole family, like indefinitely anytime you're at home. And like, that's just a really weird system to be living in.
It is. We even had our governor, it was, I believe, a commercial. It was talking about water and was actually encouraging people to, maybe tell on their neighbor. I'm thinking, wow, what era do we live in?
Well, I mean, honestly, that's not that bad. I lived in Las Vegas for a while, and the water situation in Vegas is pretty severe. And for a while, they had billboards and TV ads with the Golden Knights, their NHL hockey team. They show a guy watering his lawn, and then out of nowhere, the Golden Knights come flying over and tackle the guy onto the ground. So they were literally threatening you, like, if you water your lawn, we might send the NHL team after you.
Yeah, they're promoting violence.
Yeah, and if they want to build a data center, suddenly they got plenty of water to find for them.
Yeah, and suddenly there's no climate change. They're not talking about climate change.
Yeah, that just disappeared with all of our rights.
Well,
let's say cameras that watch the driver's eyes are now becoming standard equipment. What can that system figure out about you besides that you're drowsy?
Well, keep in mind that it's taking all of your biometrics from you. Through facial recognition, the system's going to be able to actually assume what your driving capabilities are, and it's going to be able to decide to power down your vehicle if they think that you're angry, you're not emotionally stable to drive this vehicle. It may not even start the vehicle, so again, how far is too far? When are we going to say no to this type of equipment in our cars? When is convenient not convenient anymore?
So I'm imagining getting a vehicle insurance bill in the mail that says like, oh, there's $128 in surcharges this month because you drove angry on this day and this day at this time, and on this time you were really listening to the music and weren't paying attention to the road you know what I mean? Like, that's the next thing. They're going to start selling this data right to the insurance companies so they can tax us even more on our driving.
Well, and insurance companies actually, I was told this by someone in the insurance industry, they actually use drones and they fly above your houses. Yeah, and they are inspecting your roofs. Wow. And if they see that your roof has been patched, or it looks like it could be replaced, they send you a letter in the mail and they tell you have to replace your roof or they're going to take your coverage away.
Oh, they have them over the highways too, tracking your cars. See if you're speeding, or it's like, okay, but everybody was speeding, so
yeah. So everybody gets a letter in the mail. Here's your ticket.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming a wild time. I just want to circle back to Flock. There's actually a story I read this last week that somebody acquired data on different Flock searches that were being made and found, we were talking about officers searching for, we've all heard the ex-wives story or searching their current lovers or whatever. Well, this was a guy that was literally searching or was using a camera that was set up, one of their AI ones. So it's not just a license plate camera, a full-blown AI facial recognition camera, high def, everything that was inside a Jewish children's center watching children's gymnastics classes, and he was regularly logging in and watching kids do gymnastics live. And it's like, that's the problem here. Like, oversight is actually impossible. I did the math the other day and it blew my mind. I forget which city it was, but I took one city and I looked at the number of searches that they had in 1 month and figured out roughly how many employees they would need in order to do proper oversight. And by proper oversight, I mean literally just 30 seconds per search to just quickly verify, is there a real case? Is this a real search? You know, did they have a real reason? That's it. Move on to the next one. So that's like the most minimum possible oversight you could do. But because of the number of searches involved, they would have to almost double the size of their police force just to have the people working 3 shifts. I think it was 13 employees working 3 shifts. So around the clock, 24 hours a day, 13 employees all day, every day, just looking at these searches to see if they were legit or not. So, which is, you know, financially not possible. Like, you're talking about more than doubling the budget for their employees and stuff, once you add in all the training and everything. So that's the key, because Flock, that's always their excuse is, hey, we don't own the cameras. You know, we tell them they should do oversight on their end, and they try to act like they're innocent of everything. But the fact of the matter is, they built a technology that it's not possible to truly have real oversight. It's financially impossible. And it's funny because their whole sales pitch is this will make it more efficient. You know, less officers will be able to do more work. You know, they'll be able to cover more cases. But the reality is it's exactly the opposite, because one, they're creating such a mountain of data that people have to sort through. It actually is slowing things down. Like, there's been a bunch of cities that implemented flock safety, and they tracked all of the data before, during, and after, and ended up taking the cameras down and publishing, you know, reports saying crime went up and we solved less cases because we were overwhelmed with the amount of data that we're getting, with the number of false positives. We've had lawsuits now because of things that have happened with it. So, you know, the numbers don't support what the claims are for the technology, yet it just keeps getting rolled out anyway. So it makes you wonder, like, if the reason they're telling us is they're doing it to make us safe and to solve more cases, but that has pretty much been proven that's not working. It's not doing that job, but they're still rolling them all out. So you have to question, maybe this isn't really about keeping us safe. Maybe there's something else going on, because they don't seem to care that it's not doing the thing that they claimed it would do when they put them in. They still want to put them in. So what is it that they really want from it? And the answer is obviously control, and to know everything that everyone's doing at all times. Yeah,
everything is convenience and safety, kind of like it was, you know, safe and effective. Not necessarily true.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're right around the halfway point. So we're going to take a brief little intermission here for about 3 minutes, so everybody can like grab a drink and stretch their legs, whatever they got to do. And we will be right back.
All right, T-minus 3 minutes.
Stay in the shadows and make some noise. Digital freedom, yeah, that is our choice. Privacy doesn't mean not having a voice. What you wanna share is only your choice. Yeah. How you gonna tell me what I can and cannot say online? That's some fascist dystopian Orwellian mind. Clown these bureaucratic acrobatics got me spastic and dramatic. They want access to your Spotify, your TikTok automatic. Every habit that you practice, want to catalog and stash it in a database. Is massive as some VHS tactics, but it's tragic. These fanatics want to track us like we're cattle. Build a dragnet apparatus like the internet's a battle. I'm empowered by encryption, got conviction in my diction. Privacy's about permission, but it's freedom that's the mission for a healthy, happy nation. Not a brave new world creation where they're tracing conversations, placing agents in your basement. Really, it's about permission, but they just want our submission. Privacy, protection, freedom, they're the perfect coalition. That's the freedom I define. That's the future, that's the peak. You can freely speak your mind if you're allowed to hide.
T-minus 2 minutes.
Design, they can't confine what I define. I'll shine a light and fight until we take back what is mine. That's the freedom I believe. That's the future, that's the peak. You can freely speak your mind when you're allowed to hide and speak. Hide and speak. Hide and speak. Hide and speak. Stay in the shadows and make some noise. Digital freedom, yeah, that is our choice. Privacy doesn't mean not having a voice. What you wanna share is only your choice. Look, the world is a
T-minus 1 minute.
Everybody posting every place that they've been. Trading privacy for likes, that's a heavy cost. In the ocean of data, the person gets lost. So we flip the switch, yeah, we go on the ground. Moving through the silence without making a sound. Not hiding because you you are doing something wrong. Defending your rights before they are gone. The room is secure, so let the session start. Speak from the brain or speak from the heart. Tell us your story, we unlock the doors. We invite the guests and here the floor is yours. You can keep the mask on, keep it low
30
key.
seconds.
Privacy is precious, but opinions are free. We amplify the voices that they try to call weak. Welcome to the stream, time to hide and speak. Hide and speak, stay in the shadows and make some noise. Hide and speak, hide and speak. Digital freedom, yeah, that is our choice. Hide and speak, hide and speak. Privacy
10,
doesn't mean not having a
9,
voice.
8,
Hide and speak,
7,
hide and speak.
6,
What you wanna
5,
share is only your
4,
choice.
3, 2, 1.
Hello, and welcome back to Hide and Speak, the weekly live stream about privacy and internet freedom. We are here today with Veronica from the Utah Freedom Coalition, and we're talking about the insane things that they're doing there and planning to roll out to all of us. But before we get back to that, we're going to do a little thing we do every week, which is called the Hero of the Week, where we like to honor someone who is fighting for our rights out there. So we're going to run a little video real quick.
We look for the champions leading the way. Go fight for your internet rights every day. It's freedom and justice that we truly seek. We salute the Hide and Speak Hero of the Week.
Our Hide and Speak Hero of the Week is Will Freeman, creator of dflock.org. A few years ago, Will started noticing license plate readers going up on street corners. Most of us would have grumbled and moved on. Will built something instead. It's called dflock, a free crowdsourced map of these cameras all across the country. Today, it tracks more than 100,000 of them. Think what that means. Before dflock, you had no idea you were being photographed on your way to work. Now you can pull up a map and see every camera between your house and the grocery store. Flock sent him a cease and desist letter, but Will kept going. And last month, he put his own name on a lawsuit challenging Boulder, Colorado's cameras after the city refused to show him the data it collected on his own car. Will saw a problem, he built the solution, and he continues to fight back against Flock Safety's surveillance network. And that's why Will Freeman is our Hide and Speak Hero of the Week.
Hide and Speak Hero of the Week.
Awesome. Yeah, shout out to Will. If you ever want to come on, man, we got a seat for you. Absolutely.
What a
dflock is
legend.
really cool. If you guys haven't checked out dflock, check it out. It's come a long way, and it's absolutely amazing. Like, it's scary. Now, the number today is 103,957 cameras mapped just in the U.S. So pretty terrible stuff. You have another number on there.
I wish I would have known about that when I was looking at all the cameras in my area, because I was actually driving through. I was driving around taking pictures of them, counting them up.
Oh yeah, it's actually really cool. Hang on, let me see if I can do something real quick here. To show you guys how this works. So you can pick out what you can type in an address or whatever, but you can just zoom into an area if you want. And obviously this is a major hotspot here. But once you get down there, it even shows you which direction they're pointing. So you can see exactly where the cameras are and what they're looking at. And when they have a new feature they've added for route, so you can actually put in a starting and ending address. So you can plan a map to drive to work to avoid the cameras, which is really, really a cool thing. They got a timeline on here showing how they've been added over time. They have this analysis right here showing which areas have the most of them. So a lot of really, really cool stuff on there. So definitely check it out, dflock.org. Really cool website. So shout out Will Freeman.
Really putting in the time and effort, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
You know, for no profit.
And, they came at him hard and they were like, served him a cease and desist. And he was like, yeah, I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it. And then he just fired back. He's actually, like it says, doing a lawsuit right now in Boulder, Colorado, suing them over their cameras. So he's not just he's not just talking about it. He's building tools. He's fighting them in court. Like, this guy's just all about taking them down. So very, very cool. Let's see. So let's see what else we got here. Veronica. Most Utahns have never heard of MITA until this spring. How does an agency built to support military bases end up building luxury ski hotels in the world's biggest data center?
Okay, this is going to get kind of complicated. There's a lot to it, and it can get overwhelming. So what I'll start with is the luxury hotels. All right. The military, they've always done, they offer military discounts to hotels for meals, vacation rentals. They do this across the world. And this concept isn't new. So what happened was with Hill Air Force Base, they had a hotel, the Hill House Lodge at Snow Basin. Well, that lodge was removed before the 2002 Olympics, and the Air Force had been looking for a new location around the Park City area for several years to replace that former lodge at Snow Basin. When they found the location, this is where it kind of got a little tricky. It went from, okay, we're going to build this new lodge to we're going to expand to include a commercial area, because that was supposed to help offset the cost of providing room discounts to service members. So, and that was met with a lot of opposition. However, the outcome was that the hotel was eventually built. Now, about MIDA. MIDA was created in 2007 through legislation to help protect these military installations. Now, remember, we talk about, how things are created and how scope creep comes into it, right? So MIDA, through legislation, was built to help protect these military installations. This was an agency you never voted for. It was created to develop this unused military land. The idea was good at the time, but as with all good things, it's changed over time. And the state, in their own words, have actually said, quote, "It is a quasi-municipal government with the authority to levy taxes and manage land use independent and without any other governmental oversight," unquote. Now, our state auditor doesn't audit it. A private firm audits MIDA. But guess who gets to pick that private firm? MIDA. MIDA gets to pick their own auditing firm. Now, this is so complicated. It really can get into the weeds. But the catch with this and the other authority districts is you have board members who are not elected officials. So when you look at our statute here in Utah, it's 63H-1-302.2. Now, there's a lot in there to read, but essentially what you can get out of that is the governor appoints 5 members. And then the Senate president and the Speaker of the House each get one vote. MIDA board members and staff also serve on various boards and committees related to these project areas. Now, over time, their authority has expanded. And our state auditor has created this website regarding MIDA. It's, I'll have to give it to you after the show, but so it's expanded over time. There have been, I think, like 60 legislative changes, and this is yet again another perfect example of showing how something that was intended for good can go off the rails. Now, what MIDA can do is they can create project areas, of which I think there's 29 in the state so far. They can build infrastructure, they can issue bonds, they can redirect tax revenue through tax increment financing, and they can negotiate development agreements. So all without input from the people. Now, this means that MIDA can capture the tax revenue from what gets built. I think for the Box Elder, I think it's like $49 million a year. That's, yeah, it's projected. That's what's projected from the Stratus project. And all of this was decided by a board you didn't vote for. Now, there's a conflict because you have 2 sitting Utah senators and 1 member of the House of Representatives that actually sit on that board. Not only do they sit on that board, but they help propose the laws that are being passed. And one of them is our Senate President, Stuart Adams. We have Senator Jerry Stevenson, and then the representative is Jefferson Moss. Now, MIDA is actually chaired by our Senate President, Stuart Adams. And he's been on this board since 2008. So the board approves the project area plan for this 40,000 acre data center. And then a week later, $135,000 was given to a PAC that Stuart Adams controls. So just to be clear, I'm not alleging any wrongdoing here. I'm not, but it does seem a little interesting to see how this machine operates, you know? And I would invite any of your viewers to really investigate this further, because let me tell you, when you say you're going to go down the rabbit hole with this, you can go down the rabbit hole. Because when you start looking at the statutes and how things are written, MIDA is also considered an independent entity. So according to the statute 63H-1-201.3V, the authority may, by itself or through a subsidiary, act as a facilitator under Title 63N-13-3. Now, when you start reading all these different statutes, it can get a little overwhelming. But when they act as a facilitator, right, they're providing their expertise and knowledge to another governmental entity in the interest of these PPPs. However, according to the statute 63.8-1-202.8, records are created or kept while MIDA or a subsidiary act as a PPP or public-private partnership facilitator. Those records are all considered protected records. The government then handpicks a private entity to have, you know, they have this long-term relationship with. They get special access to financing, and they have deals with revenue from taxpayer money. The public doesn't have access to the records while the deal is being made. So in other words, while they're acting as the facilitator, details about all of these deals are not open to the public. And yeah, and the kicker here, I mean, I know this is a long explanation, but the kicker here is that they're not subject to GRAMA. And GRAMA is the Government Records Access Management Act. It's like for Utah, it's like the FOIA request.
Yeah, so you're not allowed to see.
Yeah, so they're not subject to the GRAMA when acting as a facilitator. And also, MIDA can create their own GRAMA appeals board. And they can then deny records from ever being given to the people. You know, I mean, when you think about it, really, you have an appeals board that you can then say, well, we're not going to give you any of that information. And it goes back to how do the people know? They don't know because it's being hidden from there. I mean, it's so blatant, but you don't know that unless you're really digging into the code. And when you start digging into the code, it can get really overwhelming. I mean, it can really get overwhelming.
Yeah. So I'm just going to, just for a second here, just to give people an idea. This is one of the fabulous military installations that MIDA has put together for the people of Utah, which is, I think we are certainly ready for an invasion of ski bunnies at any time.
Oh, that's up at Deer Valley.
So imagine like a organization to build military installations, and this is what they're putting together. So I mean, like, this obviously something is not what it was supposed to be, you know. Like when I was looking into this yesterday, when I was looking into this yesterday, I kept being like, nah, this isn't the right site, and I kept like looking it back up, and I'm like, no, that is it, really, that's it.
And even for those rooms that are at discounted rates, you know, they're still really expensive. I have some friends in the military, and they're like, "Yeah, we can't afford that. That's too expensive, even with the discounted rates."
Oh yeah, the prices are insane. So even with a discount, like unless you're maybe a general, then you're probably not going there.
True.
So Box Elder, that's another wild one. I was digging into that for a long time last night. So Box Elder residents say they got no chance for input before a unanimous 3-person commission vote, as you were just talking about. So how is it legal and acceptable to build something the size of Washington, D.C. without any input from residents? Like that just doesn't, I don't understand how it's even, there's got to be a law against that or something, right?
Well, it's legal because they've actually implemented the statutes, right, through legislation. But is it ethical? So again, as I mentioned, because of the way the law is written, the public doesn't have any knowledge about the deals that are actually being negotiated. Because again, as long as they're acting as the facilitator, they don't have to tell. The people are kept out of the loop until the decision has already been made. And then once made, you're going to have public hearings that are held, public comment can be given, but that doesn't change the outcome. And even in the case of the Box Elder project, citizens didn't even get the opportunity to give public comment, and the commission eventually voted because there was so much opposition to this project that the commission actually voted to take the meeting virtual, and then they voted to move the project forward. But in reality, the decision was made during that negotiating process that the people don't have access to.
It's wild.
It's wild. It really is wild.
And as I always say, who voted for that?
No one.
No one.
Their own panel of people that they chose, So 9 gigawatt AI campus here. So I'm assuming that people of Utah must really love generating AI images, right? I'm sure it has nothing to do with the surveillance network, right?
Probably. Yeah. Surveillance? What surveillance?
Yeah, I was looking it up, and the entire state of Utah right now is using around like 3.8 to 4 gigawatts of power for the entire state. Everything there right now. When this thing is done, it alone is going to use 9 gigawatts. So you're talking more than double the power of the entire state for one AI campus. So I mean, the amount of power being used there, I mean, we're talking about massive data processing power, which there has to be a need for that, and it just so happens to be being developed alongside a whole bunch of new surveillance tech. I mean, if you think about if every road in the state is talking about every car that's driving through the state, and you're going to need a tremendous amount of processing power. And I think that's why immediately they used their little loophole, and they said, "Oh, this is a matter of military importance, so now we don't have to talk about what we're doing. Nobody gets to know what's going on, and we just do whatever we want, essentially." But to make that argument that this is used for military, you know what I mean? There's obviously they're using it for something. So, I mean, I guess it just makes sense. So, you look around at all the other states around here, and you keep seeing these stories in different states where out of nowhere a similar project pops up, and now suddenly there's this massive data center being put up, and nobody knew about it. Nobody knows why, and you got to wonder, well, this is why, because look what else they're putting up in your state. They're probably putting up a surveillance network that is going to need that processing power. So I think a lot of times the data center, I mean, because they can't do the massive surveillance network without the processing power. So I think in a lot of states, we're seeing the data center is like, that's the canary in the coal mine. When you suddenly see this massive data center popping up, you start questioning, what is it being used for? What is the purpose? And if you look around in most of the states, they also happen to be pushing forward different surveillance technology at the same time. So a lot of cases, it's very well connected.
Absolutely.
But think of all of the poor university and high school students who need to use AI to write their homework.
Yeah, I think that's actually been written into legislation here in Utah that they have to use AI now.
The students have to use AI? Wow. I know they recently added a new warning label that if you are anti-AI, if you speak out against AI online, then you can now be labeled as an extremist. So that's another reason for me to be on a watch list.
All a mechanism for control.
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of those going on. So let's get into something important here. What can we do? When you put this research in front of legislators, what do they say behind closed doors that they'd never say on the record?
Well, they recognize, they absolutely recognize that there are major intrusions into privacy, and they've actually said so behind closed doors. But the part that's really, really super frustrating is their attitude of defeat about it. Even though they agree with us, they can tell us it's not right, they follow up with the whole thing is, you guessed it, it's inevitable, so they're going to vote for it. That's it's got to be one of the most frustrating things ever, because they agree with you behind doors, they can tell you their frustrations about it, but instead of pushing back and fighting for the people that actually voted them into office, they vote for it. They'll vote for something that's not necessarily good for the people or what the people want, and it's really incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. So the inevitable line is just a negotiation tactic, basically. So when you're coming at them, the argument is we should not do this. So that's what they have to defend against, and that's a really difficult thing to defend against. So when they say it's inevitable, and then they shift the conversation to how is it going to be implemented, so then they change the argument to over these minor details that ultimately are not significant and don't really matter. So what they do is it's a redirection. It makes people skip past the actual real argument, the one that could actually do something, which is we should not do this. And then they're arguing over, well, how are we going to get the water for it, or how are we going to get the power for it, or how are we going to, how is this going to integrate to this, or how are we going to protect people's data? So it's just a redirection of our energy into details that ultimately don't matter. Instead of arguing that we shouldn't have our rights violated, we're arguing over how our rights should be violated, which is not the conversation we want to be having. So,
Yeah, that's true. And going back to these data centers, like you said, they're not being built for our benefit. Those data centers, they're going to house every detail that's been captured about our lives. All of the surveillance that we're under is going to be stored in these data centers, and this really should have a chilling effect upon every person out there. And people really need to dig into their own legislation in their states, and they need to read the code. And now, is it going to be boring? Sometimes, yeah, but they need to start getting actively involved and creating groups and reading this stuff. As I was reading through all of the statute, I also found out that through statute, the authority is actually an independent nonprofit, separate body, corporate and politic, with perpetual succession and statewide jurisdiction. That's MITA.
That's catchy.
They have perpetual succession forever.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's alarming.
It's extremely alarming, and that should make every person stand up and just want to push back against this giant ball of tyranny. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at FISA. You've been trying to get rid of FISA Section 702 since it started, and there's been war after war after war every time that comes up for reauthorization, and never had any success until this one time. It just yesterday it lapsed, and honestly, we didn't win. It's just the people in Congress are fighting over other unrelated issues, and because of they couldn't agree on things and they're trying to one up each other, it ended up lapsing. But that's the only reason why, is because it did have an expiration date on when they had to reauthorize, and they couldn't do it by then. But something indefinitely, that doesn't exist. It doesn't matter if they agree on it in the future. It's just going to continue being there forever. It doesn't matter if we like it or not. That's horrifying. Like, nothing should be put in with like a succession clause. It's crazy. So have you guys had any good victories that Utah Freedom Coalition has been able to move the needle on anything?
I'd say that we say UFC, Utah Freedom Coalition, really along with all of these other Utah groups, we've come together to shed light on some of the issues that Utah faces. There were actually several groups working together to stop SB 88. But, what happened with that was Utah just created a pilot program. And again, this goes back to and speaks to the level of distrust for our legislators. Because even when you think you've won, you haven't, because they manipulate their way through backdoor deals or pilot programs, or they go to the city or the county level instead of doing it through the state. They find out every which way they can to get it in, no matter what. And really, I'm not trying to be negative, but this is why the people have lost trust. They've lost trust because every time you try to do something within the process that they've provided to you, your statutes and everything else, they have this back door from which to proceed. And this ties back to the whole surveillance argument. There's always a back door. Why, somebody's in charge of creating these programs, and a programmer can always put protocols in place to enter through that back door. And that's what our legislators seem to do. Oh, you're fighting back against this bill. It didn't pass. Let's create a pilot program. It's frustrating, but we're still at it. We are not giving up.
Yeah. That's the trick that Flock uses in a lot of communities too, because a lot of places, they don't have a law that says they need to have a vote just to do something. In most places, the only thing they have is they need a vote if they need the money for it. If it requires a budget change, then they have to bring it to the people. So often Flock will offer them a pilot program and say, we'll just give you a bunch of these cameras. We'll set them all up. We'll run it for a year for free so we can get some data that will try to make it look good. So then we could say, oh, hey, it's already set up and working well. We don't want to lose that now. So, that's kind of they do that as well there to just sort of sneak it in, because that's the thing. Like, most of these states are allowed to implement this technology if they don't need money for it. So they just find a way to do it without directly taking money from the state so they can put it in. And, it has changed now to the concept of, like, it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is to ask permission. And that's kind of how the government's running now. They just do what they want and then just try to figure out how to make it okay later. But it's kind of wild.
Yeah. And then as soon as they get too much pushback, then maybe they'll draw back a little bit, but then they just try a different angle, right? They reframe it and they do it from a different side and a different sort of empathy or emotional thing, as Veronica has said.
I think sometimes you'll see these cities that people push back about the flock cameras really bad. So they'll announce, okay, we're going to take down the flock cameras. And everybody's like, yay, we won. And then a month later, somebody finds out, well, now they're looking at a different brand of camera. Like, so they're not taking out the technology. They're just taking out the brand that people know, so that now it's harder to complain about, essentially, so.
That's so true.
Yeah,
well, it's not flock. It's something else.
Exactly. Let's see. A lawmaker from Idaho calls you tomorrow and says, we don't want to become Utah. What's the first thing you tell them to block?
Well, actually, the first thing I tell them is this, that they need to ensure that they don't create a barrier between them and their constituents. Their constituents take priority. They take priority over authority districts, NGOs, lobbyists, think tanks, public-private partnerships. They cannot allow themselves to be cut off from the people. I mean, they were voted in by the people, not by all these other entities. And the priority should always be the people.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I think that's, one of the big issues that we've got right now with the country is that the government forgets that they're supposed to represent us.
Well, and I think it's easy for that to occur because people don't go to their city council meetings. They don't go to their city planning meetings or county council meetings because it's boring or it's too late or you just got off work. You know, there always seems to be excuses for why you shouldn't participate. But you know, your freedom. It's your freedom. You know?
Well, I think a lot of people are overwhelmed and they have this idea that they can't actually make a difference. You know, but like the very first hero of the week that we did on the show is this guy Jonathan, who's actually in the chat right now. He got involved in politics, and within a few months, he was able to successfully get Bend, Oregon, his town where he lives, to actually ban the flock cameras. So, you know, he wasn't even interested in politics at all until he started noticing these cameras go up. And then within a few months, he's active in his local community and is actually able to get laws changed. And now he's working on the state level. So it's, you know, I mean, you really can make a difference, and it's not as difficult as they want you to believe. The government wants you to think that we don't have any power and you just have to sit back and take it. But the truth is we really don't. Like, we do have some tools we can use. Like, it's not easy to always, but there is a reason, and you know, it's worth it. You know, it's the only way we're ever going to get anywhere here. So we need
really
people like
is.
Veronica and Jonathan and to volunteer their time and to talk to people and make people aware of this stuff and start making a difference. You know, and we start at the local level is the best way for you to affect change and work on your local community. And then that can be the test case for other local communities near you, and enough of them do it together. It's a movement, and now you can get some change at the state level. You know what I mean? And if every state is doing that, we can actually push back against this stuff and stop it before it's too late. Because I mean, like, honestly, we're like 10 years away from the Terminator 2 level. I mean, we're almost there. It's getting wild. So,
well, I think, you know, we're about 4 years away from a specific agenda. So when you think about it.
Well, and not to be cringe here, but isn't this why we named the podcast Hide and Speak? Just because everybody needs to have a voice. And if you need to hide, but you need to speak, then you can come on here and you can talk about anything that you need to say.
Yep, absolutely.
Because the individual is where it starts.
Yeah, it does. And I would encourage your viewers, your listeners on each of your platforms to get involved at the local level. Go talk to their city council members, ask about, you know, hey, can we create a community council so that we can have monthly meetings, or, you know, just something, because you have to create that relationship. You have to be able to bring people together and find out what the commonality is instead of always looking for those differences.
Absolutely.
What separates you? You have to bring people together.
And the thing to remember is that, like, a lot of people will complain on social media about, you know, the government doesn't do what I want. You know, they're not listening to the people, and like, they don't have the time to read every single post on X and Instagram all day long. You know what I mean? Like, they just can't do that. So they're going to listen to the loudest people. And the fact of the matter is, all of these companies have billions of dollars of revenue at stake. So they have people there in every one of these town hall meetings saying the point and supporting them. And the really dirty thing is sometimes they go there undercover. Like, Flock got caught not too long ago where at a city hall meeting, they had multiple people there. There was one guy who was an actual employee, and they had two people that were family members of Flock employees that were there posing as regular citizens of the city, saying about how they wouldn't feel safe if they didn't have the Flock cameras there. So, you know what I mean? There are people on a payroll to go there and pretend that they're a citizen who wants this stuff there. So if we don't go there and make our voices known and that we don't want it there, that's all they're going to see is people that look like they're regular citizens who saying, yes, we want Flock, please spy on us. So that's what they're going to do. That's what they're hearing. So we have to make sure they're hearing the actual truth. And the only way we're going to do that is you got to go down to that city hall meeting. You got to stand up in front of the microphone and say, no, we do not want this.
All right. Totally agree.
Absolutely. Let's see. If your neighbor, this is one of my favorite ones. We hear this all the time. People, you know, about privacy. They say, well, I've got nothing to hide. Well, what do you say to people who say that?
I say, great. You have nothing to hide until you do. I mean, when you really think about that, I would say if you have nothing to hide, then let me go into your house. Let me look through everything. I want to look through every drawer. I want to look at your computer history. I want to read your journal. And what are they going to say to that? They're going to be like, no, you can't do that. They're going to push back because they don't want to give up their right to privacy. So when you frame it like that, it kind of makes them go, oh, well, yeah, because nobody necessarily wants to give up their right to privacy. No. It's the same thing with your vehicles. You don't want to give up your right to travel, having the ability to move freely about the cabin. You don't. Yeah. So why should our privacy be any different? That whole argument, it's the same. Convenience, safety, I've got nothing to hide. Everybody has something to hide. Everybody does.
The other thing with that argument is it frames it as if nothing ever goes wrong. So, saying if you don't have anything to hide, you have nothing to worry about. Well, that's only true if the data only ever gets into the hands of trustworthy law enforcement who are obeying all the laws and our constitutional rights. That's a lot of ifs there, because I can assure you that is not ever going to happen. It's always going to be a chance that it gets into the hands of somebody who is not going to be following law. There's going to be going potentially through contractors and the different companies that they're working with, like Palantir and some of these other networks and Axon, whoever, so to think that you're not a criminal, so it doesn't matter if they're looking at your data, is assuming that it's never going to be looked at except for people looking for criminals. But that's just not the way it works. Hackers are absolutely going after this data. And I'm pretty sure you want to hide your bank information from a hacker. I'm pretty sure you want to, keep your identity information away from hackers, so you may not have information linking you to a crime that you need to hide, but I'm pretty sure that you have an identity and a bank account, and you probably want to keep those hidden from certain people. So,
and a lot of times it doesn't even have to do with crime or anything, right? It's like, I don't want every single person, 8 billion people or whatever in the world, knowing the name of my child or my dog or my license plate number or my address. Or it's like, it's not that I'm hiding my address. It's like, I'm not trying to share it with the entire world. That's the real thing here, is that I'm not trying to share that I'm going on a trip to Los Angeles this weekend, and here's my plane ticket, right? So everybody should be able to view that. It's not like I'm actively trying to hide it, but I'm not actively trying to share it with whoever has access to this either. Like, that's really the line that they've drawn here, and misinformed us and skewed it in such a way that everything is, well, you have nothing to hide, so you shouldn't be afraid because you're not doing anything illegal, right? It's like, yeah, I'm not doing anything illegal, but I'm not trying to broadcast my entire life to the entire world either. So it just,
Well, and it kind of creates that guilty until proven isn't innocent mentality instead of the other way around.
Yeah, that's not how this country works. Let's see. What would it actually take today to drive across Utah without being tracked?
Well, you'd have to drive a vehicle maybe 1990s. So there's no actual electronic equipment in there that can actually track you. You'd have to have maybe a full-on burqa, so they wouldn't have any kind of facial recognition from any of the cameras all throughout the state. You'd have to carry cash, pay everything with cash. I mean, realistically, it'd be pretty hard to drive across Utah without being tracked. I mean, really. And if you're in a newer vehicle, forget it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've got GPS tracking systems. You have modems that you can't turn off. Your phone is tracking you. It's nearly impossible.
Even the tires with the tire pressure monitoring systems, they use radio frequency to broadcast that to the car, and they all have a unique ID. So even something like that can be used to potentially track locations of vehicle. You're just talking about even a little tiny thing. Yeah, that's just something measuring the pressure in your tire could be used. So there's so many sensors on your car that could be used. It's wild.
It's crazy. It's actually pretty creepy, I think.
It's in everything. It's in boats. It's in your four-wheeler. It's in your motorcycle. It's not just cars or trucks. It's anything that has an engine in it or moves.
Yeah,
Very
for
true.
real. It's about time to bust out the Ford Model T.
I hear ya.
Maybe the Amish, their buggies, man, they're onto something there. I don't think you're tracking buggies that easily.
And I should listen to Grandpa.
Right? It's 2031 and you're driving to the grocery store in Salt Lake. If nothing changes, what's watching you along the way?
Well, I think with this, the question should be, who isn't watching you along the way? I mean, if we get to that point by 2031, because we're on track. We are on track to be in a complete surveillance state by 2030. And, people always call you conspiracy theorists, but you look at Agenda 2030, I'd encourage your viewers to really dig into that, because it goes back to a lot of this stuff. But we have cameras on every corner. Again, we've talked about this, listening devices on every major roadway, 5G tracking, location on your phone, your vehicle, it's everything, drones, satellite. So again, who isn't watching you along the way? Yeah. And if they have their way, that's how it's always going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually got a couple questions here from users. One is, what about Signal Trace? Are you familiar with Signal Trace?
I am not, actually.
I think that's like is that the AirPod and Bluetooth and all that? Let me look it up real quick.
Oh, it
Sounds
might
familiar.
be. Yeah, I mean, you can actually track your AirPods, or find my phone.
Yep.
That
Signal Trace links devices that regularly travel together, correlating them to a license plate. So basically, if your AirPods are typically in a car, then that goes by these certain, ALPRs and stuff, they'll realize that your AirPods are connected to your identity through your license plate. So they're basically trying to find ways to connect the car driving around to when you park that car and you walk inside, they still want to track you. They still want to know where you're going at that point. So yeah, that's creepy.
That's creepy.
Very creepy. Well, let's see. We'll get another one here. What are some of your most recommended actionable items that individuals can do in order to resist these types of surveillance?
Well, again, I think it goes back to actually getting involved at the local level. You have to get involved. You have to know your neighbors. You have to be involved with your neighbors, and this would be a good way to actually go to your city council members, introduce yourselves, tell them you want to get involved, have meetings, just be involved with your neighbors, face-to-face interactions, talk about what brings you together, what concerns you, and then try and create these action plans to actually push some of this stuff forward. And our city council members, our county council members, it's the same concept as when you're dealing with legislators. If they're only hearing one side, that's what they're going to vote for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So
that's such a great point too, because what else can you do against over encompassing everything that you can be doing? You're driving, you're walking, you're just going to the grocery store, they're watching you everywhere. There's camera in your phone, in your car, there's Bluetooth in your tires. What are you supposed to do to fight against that other than getting involved, right? And with your local communities is where everything is going to start.
Yeah, and really, when you think about getting involved and you actually start getting involved, sometimes you can have burnout or this overwhelming feeling of dread, because you're like, oh, this is inevitable. That's that whole thing. If you have people that you have connected with, you can step back and say, look, I'm feeling a little stressed. I got some anxiety going on. I can't do this today. Somebody else is going to pick up the baton and they're going to say, I got this. I got this. What are you working on? Let me help you. And that's the power of being involved in your community.
Yep.
You know, that's a power. It's really powerful because you then know that you actually have somebody that you can rely on, that's going to be there and support you, that you can call and say, hey, I need to take a break. This is too much. Or, hey, I don't understand what this statute means. Can you help me? I mean, that's the power of your community right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Let's see. You live in your state's own paperwork. What is the strangest thing you've ever found in a public document?
Honestly, I think with doing the research for this show was the Vita X. The Vita
Yeah.
X. That was actually pretty mind blowing for me.
Yeah.
I had no idea it existed. I mean, I really didn't.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
You know,
And the other
recently-
thing, oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, the other thing too is just the fact that whoever they are going to great lengths to destroy the information, even to remove it from the Wayback Machine. You know, they're going to great lengths to try and hide what it is they're actually doing.
That's dirty.
It's a scary time for sure. So one thing we look into, like, so every article with the UFC ends with "for entertainment purposes only." What's the story behind that disclaimer? And if you don't want to talk about it, obviously that's fine.
Well, I think it's just, I think there might be lawsuits, you know, if you put this information out there. We're just covering our bases. Yeah. Even though we're bringing the receipts and we're asking questions and we're exposing things, you know, it's just for entertainment purposes. So there you go. Right. Do with it what you will.
We're supposed to have
in Minecraft
in this country, right?
What's that?
We're supposed to have free speech in this country, so it's sad that you even have to put that on there.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, just to be clear, everything we're talking about allegedly happened in a Minecraft game, so no lawsuits. Where's the line for you? A badly built digital ID or any digital ID at all?
Well, like I said earlier, I think it's not salvageable.
Yeah.
I really don't think it's salvageable because let's say even with what Utah is doing, and we're getting all these praises for how great it is, but you have no constitutional protections in place prior to it being implemented or the laws being passed for it. It's voluntary now, but as we've seen with so many other things, voluntary turns mandatory.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give up my cash. I don't want to have everything on my phone. I mean, I prefer to go back to analog, you know. I don't want to have to be forced. And I don't think anybody should be forced to have, you know, this global digital control governance anywhere near us. Yeah. And it's a global agenda.
Oh yeah. Sure. I mean, like, think about it, like in real world. Like, imagine every time if you go to a coffee shop and you're trying to get a cup of coffee or you're trying to pay for gas, if you got to stop and say, "Excuse me, Daddy Government, is it okay if I buy this gas today, please? I've been a good boy." Like, because that is essentially the power that we're giving them. If your ability to spend money is tied into a digital account, every time you try to spend money, they get to decide whether or not you're allowed to do that.
And just to jump in on this too, like, we're looking at that, we're framing this as we're just giving Daddy Government all this problem, right? But Daddy Government is just made up of all these individuals, right? So really what you're doing is just giving one individual sitting behind a computer the power to control basically everything in your life. Your bank account, where you can drive, if you get pulled over, if you can spend this amount of money, if you can take money out, if you can buy food from this restaurant or if you can order something from Amazon, all of a sudden they'll just wipe that out. And that could be the one employee in the government has the power to do that to you. It's not the entire government. We look at it as this whole thing, but it's made up of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So it's just, there's so many weak spots in this design that they are creating for us. It's just absolutely terrible.
Well, and that's the power of centralized control.
Right.
And the thing to remember too is that like what the centralization of it changes every 4 years. So, people always say, like, oh, I have nothing to hide. I don't do anything wrong. But the problem is the definition of what is right and wrong changes like as often as every 4 years or sometimes even less than that. So, I mean, let's be real. If you were somebody who was geolocated as being near the Capitol on January 6th of a certain year, then your life was going to be very difficult for the next 4 years when Biden was president. Now, if you were somebody, for example, that was, at some other type of protest or some anti-immigration, anti-ICE protest, then you might now be getting harassed because you were geolocated to that. So like both those people at the time weren't doing anything actually illegal. They didn't think they were doing anything wrong, but because what they did doesn't align with the new powers in charge.
And now it's saved on a server for all time, so they can go back. Right.
So like what you do today might be perfectly fine and legal, and everybody, literally the whole country might be like, yeah, we love what that guy's doing. But 5 years from now, that might change and all that data still exists and can be brought up and used against you. So it's like, just because what you're doing is technically okay today doesn't mean it's going to be acceptable in 3 years and doesn't mean it won't be used against you then.
Exactly. And that's what happens. I mean, that's a loss of freedom right there, period. We are not a free people.
Yeah. Well, that's what, we say a lot, like when they do stuff like that, it forces people to self-censor, like, because you don't know which one of your opinions is going to get you in trouble in the future. So people are like, I better just keep all my opinions to myself. And like that's not good. Then a lot of times we have all these people that are thinking the same idea, but they're also afraid to say it out loud because they think it won't be popular, that we don't realize this is popular. We're all thinking the same thing. We're just not saying it out loud. Like
it's not even just a loss of freedom. It's a loss of liberty, which is what the whole country was built on. Because I still have freedom to say something stupid, but now you're going to arrest me. So it's like, I still have the freedom to say it, but I've lost my liberties and my civil, rights is the real issue here. And that's, what this country was built on. And not that we usually try to get too political, but, this does fire me up a little bit. So it's just sad to see the ways that they manipulate it, like Veronica said, and they phrase it from these different angles and make it emotional, and they make it short term, but then it becomes forever. So like you have like Chris was talking about the cameras that are going to go up for the World Cup. Those are never going to get taken down, right? So it's a tricky game that we're playing, and I'm glad that there's people like Veronica Harper out here to help us spread this word, and all of us here today that are talking about this and listening to it, that your voice does matter.
Absolutely.
It does. And I think it really goes back to the education piece as well. People need to understand and know their rights. They really do. I would encourage everyone to, you don't have to sit down and read the whole Constitution, but maybe take one piece of it, something on surveillance or, the power of the states, and study that. And, maybe put a class together where you're just talking back and forth. Hey, what does this mean? Did you look at any, Supreme Court cases? Some of that stuff can be really, really interesting, but it's really important to know and understand your rights, because when you do, then you know when one's being taken away. Right now, a lot of people don't know. They really don't.
Yeah, I mean, a massive disservice that was done in this country was through the educational system. Like a long time ago, students in schools were taught about civic responsibility and civic duties and how to get involved and how to change the laws if you weren't happy with them, how to get involved in your government. And all that was just removed from it. And, for this idea just pushed on us that like the government is this big immovable machine and you just kind of have to put up with it. And you can go vote. That's your only option. Other than that, just shut up and do what you're told, essentially. And then the second part was making us believe that history was boring. History all throughout school was really boring to me, and it just never really piqued my interest. And then later as an adult, the more I look at it, I'm like, history is fascinating. How did they drop the ball on that so hard? And what I realized was a lot of these really important warnings throughout history, these times, the things that went really bad for us that we should be teaching everybody about to make sure we don't do them again, a lot of them were removed or watered down or just kind of glossed over. So our kids are growing up and not being taught the mistakes of the past in order to know to avoid them in the future, which is a really dangerous precedent to set. So I think that's the issue, is that a lot of people now believe that we have no power, that the government is immovable and we can't affect what they're doing other than at the ballot box. And that's just not true. Any day of your life, you can do something to make a difference. So don't believe that you have no power, and don't believe that you don't have a voice, because we really do.
We really do.
Well, Veronica, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry about the tech issues early on. I'm glad we got that resolved. This turned out to be really awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking me on. I really do.
Excellent. Well, everybody, make sure you go check out their website here. Let me throw it up on the screen. Go check it out. They got a lot of awesome stuff there, not just related to Utah. It's stuff that really, reaches all of us, and it's things that are important for everybody. So definitely go check it out. Nathan, thank you for joining us as well.
Yeah, I just had one quote for today that I really liked. Tell a man what to think and you guide him for a day. Teach him how to think and you free him for a lifetime. So I was going to end.
Love it.
All right. Well, we will be back here next week. So thank you, everybody, for watching, and we appreciate you all. And let's see, remember that don't trust anything and verify everything, and always
vp.net, the only VPN that can't spy on you. Your browsing data says more about you than you think. From marketing companies to hackers, everyone wants it because it's worth everything, and they'll stop at nothing to spy on you. Your searches and the sites you visit, that's enough to paint a picture. Most VPNs claim to protect your privacy, but here's the problem. You can't actually verify what they're doing behind the scenes. That's where vp.net is different. We're the only VPN built with Intel's SGX technology, the same trusted security used in banking, healthcare, and even the automotive industry. Here's the key. vp.net runs inside a secure black box, a protected environment so locked down that even we can't see inside it. That means no one, not even vp.net itself, can spy on your activity when you connect. You can verify in real time that your VPN is doing exactly what it promises, protecting you and nothing else. vp.net means no hidden tracking, no broken promises, just real provable privacy. vp.net, the only VPN you don't have to trust, because you can verify.
Share is only your choice.